I'm proud to stand here today because we were invited a couple of months ago by ON2IT to do this study on IT security, and this is the very first time that such a study has been done in the Netherlands. So I'm going to show you how the Dutch IT market, IT professionals handle security affairs, and I think it's very interesting to see how well actually you guys are doing it out there in the Dutch market. So how do we do this? We did a study. Does this work? Yes, it does. Among 210 IT professionals who are responsible for IT security within their organization. And we cover organizations with 250 plus employees. So it's basically the upside of the market. And you will see in my presentation that we go in depth on 3 different categories. That is healthcare, industry, and another category, the remaining categories. Those are the main topics and the main markets that we are going to show you over here. Now, first of all, what's important is to see, well, which applications do you consider to be, and I don't actually know the English word, bedrijfskritisch, it's like organization, business critical? Business critical, okay, thank you. So that was one of our goals, to see, well, what applications do you guys consider to be critical? Which was actually one of the first questions that we asked. Now what we see, and I'll first show you what the situation is within the industry. A large part of those applications are very sector specific. So we have loads of applications which are just very specific for the kind of organization that you are in. And then the second and the third category cover, do we see, oh, something has been lost over here.
Well, maybe the addition that the biggest part, the red, is the specific applications for a particular company, yeah. And then the second and the third are ERP and mail. Okay, good.
I don't know why this isn't shown on this screen. Well, then again, I mean, those are the most important ones. So it's sector specific, secondly ERP and mail, and we basically see this in all kinds of industries. Now you see it over here when it comes to healthcare, and that is by far sector specific applications. I'll show you some examples later on. 94%, ERP 39%, and mail.
Any people from the healthcare industry here today? Okay, good.
And now I'm losing some figures over here as well. I don't know what happened. But this is the remaining sector. The remaining sector covers basically governmental or financial institutes or anything that is not healthcare or industry. But basically, we see the same thing over here. What's very important when it comes to sector-specific applications is the big variance that we see over here. So I just pulled out just one respondent from the healthcare industry who came up with 11 different business-critical applications. And as you can imagine, that we have loads of all kinds of organizations. There are so many business-critical applications over there, and it's very much tailored to the local organization. And this really tells you also something about the ceiling that there is in having those kinds of applications in the cloud. That's not something that you can really do, and which we will see later on. I mean, this is almost impossible to do that for all those applications that are out there. So now let's see where these critical applications are actually located. First of all, let's see what the situation is when it comes to the cloud. Now what you see over here on the right-hand side is, at this point, 78% of the organization says, I don't do any kind of business-critical application in the cloud. But they do expect that to lower to 52%. Which still means that in 3 years' time, half of you guys feel that you won't do anything in the cloud, at least when it comes to business-critical applications, right? We see a very small percentage, 2%, who say, well, they basically do all their applications in the cloud when it comes to business critical applications, that is. So this is what you expect to happen in the next 3 years. If we move on to the private cloud off-premise, we basically see that grow as well. Then again, we don't see a growth in organizations that have all their applications in the private cloud off-premise. We do see that part of that will grow. And then, of course, what is going to diminish, that's the private cloud on-premise. This is really going down in the next 3 years based upon your expectations, that is. So we now see that already 13% of those organizations covered in this study don't have any business critical applications in the private cloud on-premise, and this is going to grow to, well, still just a 19%.
So Reg, if we go to the right group, this is a representative sample, a large sample of companies,
yes.
Larger companies, and what you're saying there is, of those companies, within 3 years, there's only 2% who expect all of their mission-critical applications to be in the cloud, out there on the internet, hosted by another company. Let me just check, so from what industry are you, and is this something... sorry? I go to this. Is this something you can relate to? Is this a figure which surprises you when you look at those figures about where mission-critical applications will be hosted? Maybe tell me from what industry you are.
A steel company, but we're very small. But I can imagine that it's quite correct what's over there.
Okay, so a big move to complete cloud. Within 3 years, not on the horizon by far.
No.
Okay.
No. We do see that when it comes to industry, they are a little more willing to do that, as opposed to healthcare, where they are very reluctant to go into the cloud when it comes to those kind of applications.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, what's the overview in the market? Let's have 100 business critical applications at this point. Out of those 100, you see over here that at this point 5% are in the cloud, as opposed to some 71% who are on private cloud on-premise. That's basically the situation out there right now.
Okay, so the difference with the slide before this is you asked, is everything in the cloud?
Right.
And here you are asking,
here
do you have
the
applications?
averages? Yeah. And the situation, as you guys feel, will be in 3 years' time. You see some growth, a relatively big growth. I mean, it grows from 5 to 16% of the applications will be in the cloud, but it's still some 16%. And that all has to do with the fact that, I mean, there are so many sector-specific applications out there, which really limits the growth in that regard. And you see basically that when it comes to private cloud on-premise, I mean, that's still the larger part of all the critical applications in 3 years' time. And again, we see here a bigger growth when it comes to cloud in industry than when it comes to healthcare. Let's move on to security and continuity measures that are taken by IT professionals in the Dutch market. What we see over here is that the measures tend to be focused on, as I understand, the harder side and less on the softer side of IT. And what we also see over here is that when it comes to taking these measures, for instance, network segmentation, we see that healthcare is ahead of industry in that regard. And I don't know if that is recognized by healthcare or maybe even industry professionals in the industry or present over here on this specific matter. And another finding is when it comes to SIEM that half of the IT professionals judged upon the answer on this question are not familiar with SIEM itself.
Well, I would say if 50% say they don't know honestly, then probably 90% don't know about it. Because you do not tend to say you don't know in a questionnaire, do you?
No, no. That might be the case, yes. Let's not ask that on the public.
Do you know what SIEM is?
No, never heard of.
Okay, good.
No. So
just one sample.
Yeah,
but
there are many with you.
Yeah, many with you. You were in a majority.
Okay. When it comes to the concentration of IT security, that's a question that we ask as well. And we see this is basically half. Half of them say, well, it's the focus is on the perimeter, and the other half basically says, well, the focus is in the data center. Now, I'm not an IT expert, but as I heard from some of the professionals that I talked to, is that perimeter is more or less judged to be a little bit more old school kind of network security, and when the focus on the data center, that's more new school. Is that right, Jan?
I don't know, but I can ask somebody who knows, because what happened is we asked people this question, so they interpreted it for themselves. Do I have my security in the perimeter, or do I do it inside my network? So, lieve Jan, when you see those figures, what does it tell you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What it tells me is that indeed there's lots of security still going on at the perimeter, and one of the subjects of today is that we foresee that many companies are now realizing that it's not, well, that border around our company doesn't really exist anymore. 45% is already recognizing at least parts of that, so that's good news. And we foresee that the majority will be in the data center. The majority of security should be in the data center, because that's where it should be. So I'm not surprised. It means we still have work to do, so happy to do that.
So 50% to gain. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So what are the crucial IT projects that the market sees coming up in the next 12 months? Basically what we see over here is there is a focus on bring your own device trend projects. So we are talking about mobility, we're talking about Wi-Fi, we're talking about cloud, and we're talking about VDI. Those are many projects that are coming up. Then again, we see 10% of the IT professionals don't see any kind of crucial projects coming in the next 12 months.
That's a nice job.
Yeah. They're going to have an easy year, probably.
Does that strike a chord with you? Can I have hands for people who recognize that mobility will be the major thing in their organization? Okay, yes, so seems to be that quite a number of people are indeed into mobility as critical projects.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
Just a second, I'll come to you and everybody can hear you. And could I have your name and organization, please?
Okay, my name is Ment Heems, I'm from the University of Groningen. How about IP version 6? Is it in here somewhere? Is someone thinking about it? It's been going on for about 20 years now, and it's still not going anywhere. So.
I guess it is an open question, Reg. Is that true? This was an open question?
Yes, this was an open-ended question.
So people could have mentioned it if it was relevant to them. So unless it's in new infrastructure, I guess it's not really top of mind in the people interviewed. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks.
Okay, good.
Sadly, he says.
Let's move to the budget for IT security. I feel that this has not been covered before in any kind of study to see, well, what percentage of the budget is actually allocated to security within the total IT budget. Now, what we see over here is that 1 in 3 organizations does not really have an actually allocated budget for security. So it's just coming out of, well, a lump sum or what have you, and that's the way how it's being financed today. Then again, I mean, they can give a general idea of which percentage that then is. and we have done the math, and on average it is some 13% of the security budget. But I have to tell you that there are quite some differentiation in that regard. Large part of the organizations covered in this industry spend less than 10% on security within their budget. And as you can imagine, the bigger the organization is, the smaller the security part of the budget is as well. What we also see is that when it comes to healthcare, they spend less on average on security compared to what happens in the industry.
So there was people from healthcare here in the healthcare industry. This seems to be a curious finding in a way, because healthcare industry is telling us that they are adapting new technology fast, but they're doing it for less money, or they have smaller budgets. What's your take on this? Your name and organization, please.
I'm Mark van Buren. I'm from Florence in The Hague. I think this is a smaller budget, to answer your question there. I don't see the 13%. I think it's a little bit higher at Florence, but we don't have a specific budget for the IT security.
And any reason why budgets would be maybe smaller in the healthcare industry?
I don't think they see it as a big issue at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
So what do you expect when it comes to the budget on security? Will it grow? Will it stay the same? Basically, on average, we see that it grows. Some 29% thinks it will go up in the coming years, as opposed to just some 4% who believes it will go down. Which means, if you do the math, that it will grow from 13 to 16% of the total IT budget that is. I have to move back. So how are you going to spend a higher budget if you were allotted that in the coming years? We see basically that it can be spent on all kinds of topics that you see covered in this graph. What must be noted as well, that you want to spend it on the awareness of security as well, and also on hiring extra personnel who are familiar with IT security issues. So that's one of those things that are relevant for IT professionals in this market as well. So what's going to happen if you were to have a lower budget when it comes to security? It's basically postponing the investments in hardware and software. It's about having less licenses. It's about, well, the development of applications to postpone them for the long term, and, well, basically having less people as well, if you were to have less budget for security. Now let me wrap up the main findings of this study. First of all, on average, you feel you're going to spend more on security in the coming years. You expect more investment on mobility, which will actually make the network more open. And we have seen security measures are a little bit lagging in that regard. We have also seen that when it comes to solutions in the cloud, those can only be hybrid solutions. And even then, it will just be a minor part of all the business critical applications that will be hosted in the cloud at that time. We see that healthcare is least likely to use the cloud for business critical applications, especially if you compare to what's happening in the industry. But also what we've seen in industry, a lower adoption of continuity and safety measures than what is happening in healthcare and in other sectors. So far, the main findings of this study on IT security in the Netherlands. If you have any more questions, you can reach me at this email address, or of course you can talk to the guys of ON2IT, who are the the guys who actually started this study.
And also maybe important to tell you now that in case you didn't take notes or photographs, we will be sending you the results of this report, among other things. You will be getting them in your electronic and physical mailbox somewhere in the next days, after weeks, 2 weeks after the Congress, in a very special form. So you can rest assured you get all the detailed figures of the findings too. Well, Rex, thank you very much, especially for being exactly on time.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Which helps us. Are there any questions which you are pressed to ask about this now at this point in time? Yeah. Can I see a hand? I heard. Okay.
My name is Bob van Gils from Businesscritical. I was wondering if there's a trend of outsourcing, offshoring, nearshoring. Is there a relation between security and those trends? And did you measure that one?
No, we did not cover outsourcing in that regard. So it's hard to link it to the trends that I've shown you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.